Mike, when you come in the Zoom room, brother, I want you to help them understand the education that goes into being a certified financial planner and what you do right now with SignatureFD and why this work that you do with us, why this is important to your purpose and your call in life. So I want you guys to put your seatbelts on. Joshua's already in his gaming chair, but the rest of you guys, if you got a seatbelt in your chair, put it on, because these two men are getting ready to take you guys to heights and places that you dream of, but now the dream can become a reality. So without further ado, James, come in the Zoom room, baby, and make it happen. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Deirdre. So like Deirdre said, my name is James Yost. I'm a private wealth advisor for SignatureFD. So what we do is we help people. A lot of the ways that we're going to talk to you today is this is the same kind of conversations I have with my clients, is trying to figure out what their dreams are, what do they want to accomplish, and how do we help them make that happen. So I've been in this business, managing money and working with people for about a decade. And it is a truly fantastic profession. I got an undergraduate degree in finance from UGA and then went on to work at an institutional investment consulting firm. So helping pension plans and foundations and endowments. I'm sure some foundations are involved with Trees Atlanta. But helping them manage their asset allocation of their portfolio. So helping them figure out what types of stocks they should own, what types of bonds should they own, how do they mitigate risks in the future. So I did that for about 5 years and then came over to the private wealth side, which is working with individual investors on trying to figure out how they should invest their money, what their cash flow format should look like, how do they optimize taxes and all that kind of fun stuff. And to me, it's fantastic being able to work with individuals and help them on a personal level and establish those relationships. So it's been a very fantastic and rewarding career for me over the past 10 years, which I'm really happy about. So what I do is, Deirdre had mentioned, I'm a certified financial planner. And so basically what that looks like is there's an educational curriculum there that's 6 classes you take that cover all the various topics of financial planning, from investments to retirement planning to estate planning to taxes to insurance. All of this wraps up into someone's financial life. And then you put that together, you present a financial plan, and then you take an exam. And then you also have to have a experience requirement too. So those are some of the things that come into getting a certified financial planner designation, which really just enables you to go out and deliver good financial advice to clients. And so my firm manages about $4.5 billion in assets, with our average client being somewhere in the $2 to $3 million range in investable assets. And we work with people as much as $600 million all the way down to maybe $500,000, doing a lot of the same exercises, maybe a little more detailed, but similar to what we're going to do today with you all. And so I think that there's no better time than now for y'all to start thinking about some of these concepts. And just like Ira had said, I mean, this is perfect. You start out and survive. And this is the trajectory of any self-made person in America, no matter who it is. You start out in survival mode, then you work your way into the success mode, and then you can kind of get into this significance standpoint. And I love that he put, do I make a difference? So one of the things we talk about with our clients is, okay, you've created this massive pool of wealth, but now how do you not only enjoy it, but how do you make an impact and give back to the people and the causes that you care about? And that's no doubt part of the cause in the corpus of some of the funding that's happened here with Trees Atlanta. So I'm honored to be here to speak with you all, and I wish I could be in a room to see all of your faces. I see a lot of people with their cameras off, and that means that you're going to be a target for my trivia questions that are going to be coming out here in a few minutes. But I really appreciate y'all having me here, and I'd like to open it up. And if anyone has any questions before or after, I'll share my contact information. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you young folks.
They're opening up those cameras, James. That was code for don't call on me. No.
That's right. That's right. We'll see how many trivia questions we can get to, but that's an automatic red flag. I hope that's okay, Deirdre.
Absolutely, handle your business, man. We want to test for learning.
There you go. So I guess we'll kick it off. So Ira's going to walk us through this presentation, section 1. I'm going to take section 2, and then we're going to pivot over, I think, and start taking a look at some of these worksheets that Ms. Cox had sent around. By the way, I love that my girl Angel Cox is also a coach here. Is she on today?
Miss
I don't think she is.
In the house.
Is she in the house?
Yes.
I
She
love
better be
that.
in the house.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. All right, cool. Well, Ira, I'll kick it back to you, and then we'll get this going. Does that sound good for everybody?
Perfect.
Yep.
You know, I have to say one of the best things I ever did was invested time into meeting a financial advisor, and not because I got a whole bunch of money to meet with one, because he challenged me to look beyond my current behaviors and to consider different activities that might prepare me better for the future, not only myself, but for my family and my grandkids and their kids. So I tell everybody on here, don't just think a financial advisor, and to me, that's kind of been the stigma of the industry a little bit, that you're only for, but that's not true at all. I believe that they can help prepare your mind, because the mind is the first thing that needs to make a shift before your behaviors. They can really prepare your mind to consider these type of activities, behaviors you might want to take to prepare you, and not only yourself, but your family and your family's family for wealth in the future. So with that, let's jump right on in. Building your financial future. So we're going to go over assets and asset building. I believe this is super important. Man, I wish somebody would have talked to me about what an asset was when I was going into college and, you know, trying to find myself and figuring out, you know, how this credit card I was about to use, or how these Tims I have on, you know, were going to be able to make me popular in school. I wish my mindset was more focused on assets and liabilities and how I can prepare myself after those 4 years. But we're going to dive into a little bit of that. So, section 1, key takeaway: assets can lead to wealth and financial security. And I love that it says wealth. I believe there's a difference between rich and wealthy, right? Being rich is something that, in my opinion, from my experience, riches can go away. I mean, you can be rich one day and you know, lose all your money. Ask people that have gotten really rich. I've had some clients that will tell you all day long, I made a lot of money and I lost a lot of money. Like at one point I considered myself rich, but I believe wealth goes across generations, right? Your wealth, and you transfer that type of wealth down to your kids, they transfer it to their kids' kids. It's not just a one snap deal or one shot deal. So what is an asset? Something you own that has value, right? 3 types of assets: physical, financial, productive. And the value is determined based on the type of asset. So I want all of you to think about right now, and you might not have anything that's an asset, or you might have some things, but I want you to think about your own personal portfolio. And when I mean portfolio, I'm not talking about stocks, bonds, or anything like that. I'm thinking about things that you have in your possession, your portfolio. Do you have something that you actually own that it is of value? It could be physical, financial, or productive. I'll tell you a little secret. Anybody that's a sneakerhead, if you're in here and you own sneakers, maybe that might be something that you own that's of value. There's a huge secondary market for sneakers now. I'm not saying that's the biggest asset you can own, but think about it that way. If you purchase it, can you actually resell that to get some type of gain from it? That could be a stock, that can be maybe something like a sneaker, that can be jewelry, that can be houses, cars. Again, you might not have any of these things, but as you go through school, as you walk through your journey, I want you to think about, how can I be a owner of things, right? If you look in the Rick Ross, he always talks about being a boss, right? How can you be a boss? Okay, physical, financial, and productive. So physical, and I might be, and keep me in line, James, but when I think about assets from a physical perspective, I do think about like homes, I think about cars, I think about jewelry, but I also think about my body. And this kind of on the left, but I think my body is an asset, right? And how can I make sure that my health is of value, right? When I think about financial, I might think about stocks, you know, buying a portion of ownership into a company. So I'm not only a consumer, but I'm actually an owner, and I'm actually involved in participating in the wealth building process. Productivity, productive, maybe that's how I work. I think that's what they're considering. You know, maybe me working in a certain way, having good behaviors is an asset because it furthers me to be able to reach certain goals. And value determined based on the type of asset. I think James is going to go into this a little bit later, but type of asset, again, whether that's a stock or a bond, or whether that's a mutual fund, some type of portfolio or real estate. There are different types of assets that you can actually invest in that can help you gain more wealth or your net worth, or just increase your portfolio of assets. And when you look at this, I don't want to, make it super specific, but I just want you to think of things that you own that has some type of value, right?
Ira, can I jump in here? You said something that I think is really important for these young folks. Would you go back to that last slide?
Sure can.
So show of hands for all these cameras that are on. How many people have heard of Warren Buffett? How many people know who Warren Buffett is? Hopefully a couple of you. Only a few. Okay. So actually we got a couple, maybe 30%. So Warren Buffett is one of the most famous investors of all time. He was the richest man in the world at one point, but he gave away about $40 billion. So no longer holds that title. But one time he sat down in a classroom full of high school students. This was probably back in the 80s. And he said, if I told you I would give you one car, and that car would be your car for the rest of your life, what kind of car would you choose and why? And so all these young folks were telling him about what kind of cars they wanted to pick and all this stuff. And the analogy he made is you really only have one life, and your body is, if you think about your body in your physical sense, is that one car that you have for your entire life. How would you take care of it? If you only had one car for the rest of your life, how would you take care of that car? How would you service that car? How would you make sure it's getting the right energy it needs to produce at the highest level? And that goes back to what Ira was saying about the physical assets. I mean, you are your biggest asset. Right now, each of you are your biggest assets, not anything in your portfolio. It's you yourself, and how you treat your body, how do you treat your mind in a way that allows you to add value and create wealth over time. And so I think that's the physical aspect is so important. How you take care of your body, how you nourish your body, how you nourish your mind with education. All these things, especially at your stage in life, that is the most important asset that you have. So I just thought that was important. I love that you touched on that, Ira.
No, that's super important. And I'm glad you highlighted that. And it's so true. Like at this point in your life, your health and you paying attention to your health and what you put into your brain is super important. And it really helps drive your decision making. So one of the books that I feel like changed my life was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Love that book because it kind of took me through a process, and it took me through a lifestyle of two people, one that was an IE owner and one that was a worker. Nothing wrong with either one of them, but it gave me options. And it gave me a different perspective on what I wanted to do with my life and where I wanted it to end potentially, right? I wanted to end working a 9-to-5, which is nothing wrong. I do it right now, nothing wrong. But it gave me another option that I want to own, right? And that I want to pass down some type of generational wealth to my kids and their kids. So I would definitely invest in that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Let's keep going. Owning assets. It creates a buffer to handle emergencies, helps you reach your goals, increases your options, helps you earn more income, inspires you to look to the future, and reduces stress. Let's touch on a little bit of these, each one of these bullets. Creates a buffer to handle emergencies. So I do a lot of financial coaching, and one of the things that I see typically when I coach someone, and it doesn't matter how old they are, it doesn't matter their socioeconomic background, a lot of times what I see is they don't have a lot of buffer or what I call discretionary income or savings to where if something happens that's out of the norm, they can handle that without reaching back and touching their money for some of their bills. What I call that is the oh snap account, right? Or the oh my God account. That's the account where if I'm driving down the road, right, got my Tupac on, got my Jay-Z on, and got my Young Thug on, right, and then I drive over a nail and I swerve, and now I got to go over to the side of the road, and I have a tire that's flat, right? Now what am I going to do? I wasn't planning for that. I have enough money in my account to make sure my bills are paid, right? I got enough money in my account to make sure I eat. What am I going to do about this emergency situation so I can go on about my life? That's what I call a buffer to handle emergencies that just pop out of nowhere. Because if there's one thing that I personally believe in my life, a lot of times it's not the things that you know are coming that really set you off your goal. I know I have to pay a mortgage or a rent every month. I know I have to pay a cell phone bill. I know I have to, I have fixed expenses that I know I have to pay every month. It's those things that come out of the left or come out of the right and slap me upside my head that I wasn't expecting that really throw me off my goal and then make me rethink my money strategy, right? So creating a buffer to handle emergencies so you don't always have to reach back in the pot, and that pot are things that are supposed to be paying fixed expenses for your bills. Helps you reach your goals. How can assets help you reach your goals? I believe assets can help you reach your goals. And James, I want you to jump in and I want your perspective on this, please, because I believe it helps you create what I call passive income, or it helps give you a padding to the income that you use to work on a 9-to-5, but you also have different streams of income coming in to help you focus more on potentially what you want to do opposed to what you have to do. What do I mean by that? I mean that I believe the source of true wealth are multiple streams of income and coming in from different places. Maybe it's a 9-to-5. Maybe it's rental income. I own a house and people live in it and they pay me money. Maybe I have a business on the side, a side hustle, and that's paying me money. Now I have multiple streams of income. All my eggs are not in one basket. Now, if I want to go out and potentially start a business, or I want to go out and invest in another asset, I'm a little bit more comfortable to do that because I know all my time and all my resources are not dedicated into one area. James, what's your perspective on that?
No, yeah, I love that. My thought is, as y'all are coming into your careers and you're starting out at the beginning, your biggest asset, like we said, is going to be yourself, and then that's going to shift to your income. So for the first maybe decade to 2 decades of your careers, your biggest asset will be the paychecks that you're earning. That's going to be your biggest source of income for the longest time. But if you can create assets in some of the ways that we'll talk about, and some of the ways Ira talked about, whether it's creating an investment portfolio that's kicking off income, or owning some rental properties that are kicking off income, or you've invested in some businesses that are kicking off income. At a certain point in your life, you want to have that shift so that your biggest asset and income source can shift to be something that's passive. That's the whole concept of retirement, so that you don't have to focus on making sure you're putting in the hours and putting in the overtime to be able to enjoy the life that you've created. And that's the whole concept of creating an asset that works for you. One of the biggest concepts in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that book that we talked about, is creating some passive income streams so that you don't have to work for longer. So you could retire, instead of retiring at 65, you could retire at 55, and you have these passive streams of income. What goes hand in hand with that is keeping your expenses reasonable. One of the worst detractors of creating a high net worth is trying to keep up with other people that are spending. Nowadays, with Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, for some of you folks, and you're seeing all these other people use all this money, and they're doing all these things, they're buying all this stuff, that it's very hard to stick to a plan with all this going on and all these distractions around you. But you have to understand that it's not how much you spend, it's how much you can accumulate. That's really going to be the importance of what your net worth is. And all that ties back in here to creating more other options for income other than your day-to-day job.
Thank you so much. And man, I always go back to if I knew, right? And I don't blame anybody for my lack or my ignorance in finances. Some of it is just my parents worked on prep or didn't have the knowledge, so they didn't pass that on to me. I'm going to be different. I'm going to pass that on to my kids. But if I had the knowledge when I was entering into school, or even when I was in high school, to really start to shape my mind to not necessarily think of accumulating as much as possible based on other people's perspective, other people's perception of myself, and investing in myself, right, and getting different assets and getting different knowledge, that I would definitely do that because it pays dividends in the future. So increases your options. Increases your options. Again, I take this back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm a lot that I learned from there. Take it back to diversification, and I believe that's an important word in how you diversify yourself, not just in your portfolio from finances, but just in your thought as well. So I have options if I'm owning assets, right? Again, maybe I want to, not work a 9-to-5. Maybe I want to travel the world. Maybe I want to invest in a business. Maybe I want to work for a nonprofit or go overseas and help a developing country. I believe it increases your chances to have options to do some of the things that are important to you or that you want to do at any given time by focusing on creating an asset or a passive income strategy. I.e., I always go back to all my eggs are not in one basket, right? I have different streams of income coming in so I can think beyond that 2-week payment increment. I think that's super important. And this is, I think this is an evolution and you get there, but a lot of times in that survival mode, the only thing we're thinking about are those 2 weeks. From that Monday to that following Friday, if you get paid on that Friday, I'm just trying to make it to my payday. I'm just trying to make it there because when I get paid, man, I feel a little bit more alive. And then I got another 2 weeks to put in the grind, and then I feel a little bit more alive. And for me, owning assets or getting passive income keeps that feeling of being alive and being solvent and self-efficacy. It keeps it going because you know you're not just looking for one payment to solve all of your issues, one paycheck to solve all of your issues, and then it's back into the rat race. So I believe it increases your options. Helps you earn more income. Definitely, if we're looking at assets, maybe it's rental income or maybe it's dividends from stocks that you own in your portfolio. If they're constantly putting money into the pot, then that pot is growing. It keeps growing over time. One of my really good friends, he's extremely wealthy, he said, Ira, he said, wealth is making money while you're sleeping. And I had no idea what he meant by that. I'm like, sleeping? I'm not working when I'm sleeping. I'm knocked out, drooling, snoring, right? And he said, no. What type of vehicles do you have in place, right? What type of instruments do you have in place that continuously earn income while you are not working, right? That passive income. You're not doing anything. You're just sitting there. You're chilling. Maybe you're on a beach somewhere. You're reading a book. You're spending time with your family, but you're still earning some type of income. Inspires you to look to the future. I believe that's important because for me, I not only look at today, but I have 3 kids with 1 on the way, and I'm looking at what can I do today to pass down some type of generational wealth for them in the future. And then not only them, but for my grandkids. I believe we have to stop the cycle that everybody's starting from zero. We don't have to do that, right? What can I do today to prepare my kids and my kids' kids to have a better chance of success or reaching that mark of significance, you know, without financial turmoil, right? That's what I feel as though is my responsibility. So owning assets, getting involved with people like James so they can help educate me and propel me forward helps me look to the future and reduces stress. Look, one of the most stressful things is walking around knowing that you're one paycheck away from losing everything. And I've been there. I've been there while I've coached other people, right? One paycheck away from you feeling as though your lights are going to get turned out or feeling as though you won't be able to eat. Having to go to McDonald's and get that $2.35 double cheeseburger value meal. When I was in school, I probably used to eat them, you know, at least 3 or 4 times a week. So I understand that. And they're reducing that stress so you can actually live longer. We're talking about that health proponent, right? Walking around in financial distress because you're in that rat race and you're constantly living from paycheck to paycheck takes a toll on your life. So investing in yourself from a knowledge perspective, surrounding yourself with people who have done it before and can pour into you, helps you make certain decisions so you won't have to live in financial distress for a long time in your life, right? Everybody's going to go through some things, but if you can quickly learn how to, you know, get involved in assets, learn behaviors around savings, learn daily money management skills that help you reach your goals instead of hinder you from reaching your goals. Ownership, right? These type of things can potentially help you reduce stress so you're living in that mode where you can think about significance, so you can think about giving back, so you can think about bringing someone else up and educating them. If you're worried about your lights getting cut off, if you're worried about someone coming to take your car or coming to take your house, it's very hard to live in significance. Extremely hard. I remember I was on a date one time and you know, I knew I had $5 in my checking account, and in my mind, I'll just overdraft, right? Because I gotta show my girlfriend a good time. And you know, the whole time I was like, man, I just hope it happens. I hope I'm able to overdraft and I can pay for these movies. But that type of financial distress you don't want to live through. And it's sometimes because of your decision making. Keep going. Sorry for a little lag around. So key takeaways: assets can lead to wealth and financial security. Again, reducing stress, making certain decisions so you can live not only for today, but for the future. I mean, that's super important. There was an exercise in here, James, that I wanted to go through with them. Sorry, it's like a lag. maybe it's not in here anymore. Okay, I don't know what happened to it. It was is this an asset or that type of exercise? Maybe it's in the next one. All right, but that is section 1, James. Thank you for chiming in. I appreciate that, and it's all you. I can make you the presenter, or I can flip through it for you. What you want me to do?
If you, let's see, we can do either way. I feel like it's kind of set up well here, so we can just keep rolling.
All right.
All right, so now we're going to talk about how to, a lot about assets. It's going to be about net worth. One of the first things I do with all my clients before we do anything is we sit down and we take a look at all of their assets, all of their liabilities, and try to figure out what's their net worth look like. It gives you a good stake in the ground to figure out, one, what have I accomplished over the past however many years? And then how do I take what I have today and optimize that going forward to the future? And so I want to start this by a quick exercise here. And I love doing this with Ms. Cox's classes, but I can't see all of y'all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call on volunteers. Actually, I guess they're not volunteers. I'm going to ask each of you how much money, and I'm assuming y'all, I don't know how old everybody is, but I'm assuming y'all are 20 years old-ish, maybe a little younger. And I'm assuming you're going to retire at age 65, okay? So what I'm trying to figure out is how much money do you think that you would need to contribute into an account on every paycheck, so every 2 weeks, so that when the time you retire, it will be $1 million. And we're going to use some assumptions for this. We're going to use an 8% annualized investment assumption. But what amount do you think you need to contribute into a Roth IRA, for example, every single paycheck, so that when you're 65 years old, you have $1 million? And I'm going to start with, okay, Aaliyah Bradley.
Yes, hi. I'm not really sure, but I'll take a wild guess. I'll say a couple thousand.
Couple thousand. All right, we're a little high there. We're gonna then, let's see, how about Cecilia?
Just 1,000.
Okay, 1,000. We're still high. How about my boy Joshua over here with the nice office going on?
I'd probably say a lot less than that, considering we're every paycheck. Let's just assume we have like a bi-weekly or 2 times a month paycheck. I'd assume you'd only need to save like a few hundred, maybe even $100 each paycheck.
So my man Joshua is very close. So if you were to contribute $107, just $107 every paycheck for the next 45 years, by the time you retire, you would have $1 million. And that's, again, assuming an 8% return. So the reason I always start with that is that a lot of people don't think that this is attainable. But realistically, and I know everyone has a different situation economically, but at some point in time, if you can increase your education, you can increase your earning potential. There's a high chance that you'll have at least $100 from a paycheck perspective to contribute to your financial future. And so I want to just make sure that all of you know that if you have discipline in your spending, and you can create discipline in savings, you could also be a millionaire by the time you retire. Anybody can accomplish that feat. It just takes some discipline. And so I wanted to start with that. So when we look at net worth, Ira, if you go to the next slide. So net worth is effectively your assets, the things that you own, which Ira's talked about, how do we build those assets, versus minus your liabilities, so how much you owe on those assets. So I'll read from this slide. Net worth is a good measure of your financial stability. And then it shows you how to calculate it, basically taking your assets minus your liabilities. So if you go to the next slide. So the assets, the thing that you own, the liability is how much you owe people, and then what you have there left over is equity. So for an example, if you own a house that's worth $100,000, but you owe the bank $50,000, your equity in that house is $50,000. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. That's a fairly intuitive, simple example. And the sum of the equity that you have in all these different assets is what gets to your net worth. So when I'm sitting with a client, we're looking at all their investment accounts, all their savings accounts, all their private or all their personal property, whether it's house or cars or automobiles, boats and art or jewelry. Ira touched on some of these. All their real estate assets, those all fall in the asset column. And then I have in their liability column, their credit card debt, any outstanding debt they have on their car, on their house, or any other loans that they may have. And then the sum of those two columns gives you your net worth. So I think it's really important to have the distinguish there. We'll go through some examples here. So Ira, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay. In this example, my boy Ezra, he bought a car that's worth $5,000 and he used a down payment of $600. So how much did he have to take out in a loan in order to buy this car? And we'll start with, let's see, let's go with Amy. Amy, you there? I see you're muted still.
So sorry. What was the question?
So Ezra here had just bought a car worth $5,000
Mm-hmm.
and he put down $600 in a down payment. So what's the amount that he had to take out for a loan in order to purchase that car?
Would it be 4,000?
So it'd be $4,400.
Yes, 4,040.
Okay, there you go. And so just this basic calculation is helpful. So the car's worth $5,000, and then he's going to owe $4,400. So the $600 that he put into it is essentially his equity. Okay, that's how that would work. So Ira, if you go to the next slide. So again, it's this the assets minus the liability give you your net worth. Now let's go to the next one. So when you add all these things up, okay, having a positive net worth provides you with a financial cushion that Ira just talked about, when it's kind of a buffer there that you know that if you fall on hard times and you can't rely on your income, you have some sort of asset there that you could potentially draw on. So if you have zero net worth or negative net worth, then you effectively have no financial cushion. If you were to lose your job and not have the income and it's all going straight out the door to your expenses, now you're in a very bad situation. And so that's one thing you always want to be trying to add to your net worth, not taking away from it. We're in the unfortunate situation now in America where a young person who goes to college is likely to have to take on some student loan debt. So by the time you graduate college, a lot of y'all will have negative net worth just because that's the reality that we live in America right now. And so you'll be spending your first several years, maybe several decades in your working life trying to pay off your student loan debt so that you can get into this positive net worth category. And so the steps that you would do to calculate your net worth, and I'm hoping that y'all can do this in your own time, is you list out all the assets that you have, like I just did for my client situation. You calculate the total. So all of your, whatever you have, it's a car, if you have a house, or if you have bank accounts, if you have sneakers, which Ira talked about, which has become quite the hot commodity lately, then you list out how much you owe, and the net number between the assets and liabilities is your net worth. And that's always a healthy exercise. I try to do it for myself once a year. Sometimes more frequently than that, just to kind of keep a finger on the pulse. Once you automate a plan, you probably won't need to do this as frequently, but for y'all starting out, I think it's good practice to really be honing in and making sure you're keeping tabs and know what your net worth is. All right, the next one is going to be more complicated. So we're going to walk through it together, and then I'm going to give y'all maybe 60 seconds, and then we're going to call on a volunteer to see if they could figure out the answer. So Ira, you want to go to the next one? Okay, in this scenario, the answer's on the next page. So It's okay. We'll just go through it anyway. So, all right, we're going to walk through this together. So everyone try to follow along here. So Justine bought her home 7 years ago. Current value of the house is $130,000. So that's an asset. She still owes $100,000. That's a liability. She has $1,500 in a checking account. That's an asset. $500 in a savings account for emergencies, the OSNAP account. She has a truck that she bought that's only worth about $2,000 now, but she still, so that's a $2,000 asset. She still owes $3,000, that's a liability. She has a credit card balance of $1,000, which is a liability. Student loan balance of $15,000, liability. And then some personal items that's valued about $7,000, that's an asset. So hopefully y'all can write those down and try to do a calculation here, try to figure out what the total assets are, what the total liabilities are, and then what the net worth is. And we'll give this about 30 seconds and see if one of y'all can come up with the answer. Yes, Kate. So Ira's sharing his screen that has the slides on them. I don't know why it's not letting you see that. All right, I'm going to call out Frances. I know she's working hard at this. Frances, could you tell us either the assets, liabilities, or the net worth? You're still muted.
I just did the net worth,
Okay.
which comes out to 22,000.
There you go. She nailed it. There might be, there's also this information on the next slide. So the assets were 141,000. The liabilities were 119,000, and the net of those is 22,000. One of the things I want to point out here with this exercise is if you look at the truck situation, so cars are depreciating assets. And the reason I want to really harp on this is when you're first starting out and you first start getting a nice fat paycheck, one of the first things a lot of people want to do is go out and buy a new car. New cars are historically very bad investments. And this is a kind of an example of that. And so in our situation, Justine bought a truck several years ago. So let's say she bought it for $5,000. And she still owes $3,000 on that car after several years, but now the truck's only worth $2,000. So it's negative $1,000 of equity in that car, meaning if she wanted to sell that car for $2,000, she would then have to also pay off an extra $1,000 out of her savings just to cover the debt that she still has in that car. And so a lot of you, as you go forth and one of your first financial goals could be to own a car, I'll challenge you to try to get something that has good value. And is not anywhere near brand new. So maybe 5 years, 10 years, I don't know what your situation is and how handy you are, but cars are very depreciating assets. So if you buy a new car that's $50,000, I'll just give you an example. I drive a 2008 BMW that I purchased 2 years ago for $4,000, $4,000 cash for that BMW. That car, when it was brand new, is $60,000. So somebody paid $60,000 for a car and then 10 years later sold it to me for $4,000. That is a prime example of a depreciating asset. That's the kind of thing you do not want to own to increase your net worth, especially when you're starting out, because that will completely curtail you. All right, let's go forward a couple slides to I think it's slide 21 or 17 on yours, sorry. All right, so the ways that you can increase your net worth, change your net worth for the better, is to increase your assets. Another way to do that is to decrease your liabilities, and whether that's paying off debt. So if you look at the equation, if you have student loan debt, say you have $20,000 in a savings account and you owe $15,000 in your student loans. If you're working in your job and you get a $5,000 bonus, if you pay off your student, if that just goes straight to your student loans, your net worth is increased by that same amount. So that's two different ways you can do it. You can put it in the asset column or decrease the liability column. Both will have a positive impact on your net worth. So let's go to the next slide and talk about some of the ways to increase your net worth. All right, the first and by far most important is spending less than you make. So if you're making $50,000 and you take out the taxes, right? Uncle Sam's got to get theirs. Say you're left with $35,000. That's about $3,000 a month. If you spend more than $3,000 a month, you will never increase your net worth. There's no possible way. It's not ever going to happen. If you can spend maybe $2,000 a month, and then you have $1,000 a month net extra that you can put towards savings or investments or getting another source of income, that is the only way to increase your net worth. So you spend less than you make, first and foremost. That is absolute necessity. That goes back to what I talked about earlier. When you see your friends or you see people on Instagram buying stuff that you want to go buy, you don't know their financial situation. You don't know if they have someone else paying for all these things. You don't know if they're in debt up to their neck. All you can control is what you can control. No one else is going to do this for you. So you want to spend less than you make. You want to buy less than what you can afford. So instead of buying maximum house that you can afford, you want to probably buy something a little bit less. You want to be able to save money. Those three things kind of work in tandem. There's a lot of programs your employers will have when you set out in your careers. So there could be automatic contributions to a 401k, for example. You always want to take advantage of those types of things. It's money on the table, free money. Everybody loves free money. The employer programs will be there. Some employers will offer the ability to directly pay off your student loans before you pay taxes on that money. So if you make $1,000, the government's going to take $150 of that, maybe, let's call it. So you're really left with $850. In some of these scenarios, your employer could pay the federal government directly for your student loans, and that will be pre-tax. So instead of them paying you getting $850 and paying off student loans, the government will pay $1,000 directly, your employer will pay $1,000 directly to the federal government to go pay down your student loans. That's $150 saved right there. So all of these are techniques that you can use to increase your net worth and chip away over time. So use debt responsibly. Credit cards are not good debt. Good debt is debt that is low interest rates on assets that are appreciating. So debt on your house, for example, is very good debt. So if you own a house and you're paying 3.5% every year in interest, that interest is deductible. So it goes against your income from a tax perspective, which is very, very good. And you're hoping that the value of that house is going to appreciate beyond the debt that you're paying on it. So that's what we call good debt. Student loan at times can be good debt because you're investing in yourself and your future. The assets will far outweigh the liabilities. Taking credit card debt in order to buy material things that have no value is an example of bad debt. That is how you get into a trap that is very, very, very difficult to get out of. Another way to increase your net worth, paying down your debts. We talked about that. Explore the public benefits that are out there. Specifically right now during the coronavirus situation, there are ample opportunities for you to get assistance from the government. Tax credits, which is something we won't really get into details of, but they're also very ample out there. Shopping around, the car scenario is a great example. Not just going and buying the first car that you see that's $25,000. I mean, that same car with the same miles could be for $15,000 elsewhere, right? So you just got to shop around, continuing to build assets. There's one other thing I wanted to mention, but I don't know where all you are in your life, but there is, especially if you're in some sort of educational component, and this might be the most important thing I talk about. So I would love to have attention here from everybody who's in who's going to school and will have expenses. I personally work with multiple nonprofits that provide scholarships to people in y'all's exact situation. I was reviewing scholarship applications the other day for one of these organizations, and it was for a $2,500 a year scholarship. And there were 4 applicants. 4 applicants, and we chose 2 of them. So you have 50% chance of getting getting $5,000 effectively. How many people in here would love the opportunity to get a 50% chance at $5,000? I would imagine everybody. If you are in school, I guarantee you with 100% certainty that there are multitude of scholarships available in your community based on what you like, the type of person you are, all these things. You can use to your advantage to get financial assistance by way of scholarships. There are thousands of organizations, foundations, endowments that have to give this money away. They literally have to give it to people. And all you got to do is find these sources, write a couple of essays, and that could be $5,000. I know many, many people who paid off their entire colleges just on these types of scholarships. So just try to do some research, focus on that, and it'll definitely pay dividends if that applies to you.
Hey,
All right, let's scooch it. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that I love how you went through all these, because again, these are super important, and I wish I knew about them years ago. One of the things that, as I reflect back on my college career, 3 areas that I wish I would have paid attention to that are I believe are slightly easy to do. One are making sure my credit score is as high as possible while I'm in school, and it is maintained. So when I graduate, I can actually, if I want to purchase a home, I'm not scrambling, or my focus isn't on increasing my credit score. Saving and getting involved in some type of investment opportunity, whether it's buying stocks or a mutual fund or something early on. Like, I wish I would have paid attention to those 3 key areas. Have a goal. By the time I graduate, I want a credit score to be a 720. What type of action items do I need to do that? Savings. I want to save X amount of money by the time I graduate. So whether I want to purchase a home, my first home I live in, or my first rental property, or start a business, whatever. And then 3, if I buy 1 stock a month, maybe I can put me in a position to where it can help me gain net worth, after I get out of school, or at least have that behavior already solidified, right? So those are the 3 areas that I've always wished I would have taken advantage of as I entered school.
Yeah, one last thing I'll touch on too before we go, Ira, on this ways to increase your net worth. The common denominator here, in my mind, and again, this is people, there's so many opportunities out there, but no one is going to do any of this for you. You will have, if you want to build your net worth over time, it is only going to happen if you have the discipline to make it happen. A lot of these things on the left-hand column here requires discipline. Right. No one can give you discipline. You have to do this on your own. If you want to be successful and you want to build wealth in this country right now, it requires discipline, and it requires you to do this for yourself. No one is ever going to do any of this for you. That just doesn't exist. So if you want to change your financial situation, if you want to have a better life financially, these are the types of things you have to do, and it's all going to fall on you. No one is ever going to take care of this for you. I just want to, make sure that we're clear on all of this.
Man, you preaching right now, James. And that's true. And it does not matter. And I want everybody to listen to this. I don't care what type of environment that you come from. I literally do not care. I don't care what you've been educated up until this point. You can be the master of your fate and the destiny. I knew that before I said it. It was in my mind. But you can control your financial outcomes, right? And it's about behaviors. And it's not about getting it right every single time. And I think that's important for us to say. We're not talking about perfection, because I've made a lot of different mistakes even when I had the knowledge. It's about being consistent in your efforts. It's about surrounding yourself with a team of people that can help you, right? And pour into you and that have experiences that can help you reach your goals. So everybody on this call, again, I don't care if you come from a home to where they are great savers or a home to where they're in the rat race. Have some type of vision for how you want your life to look, and then go out and execute. If you don't know it, surround yourself with people and get the resources so you can have that knowledge. So good, James, thanks for bringing that up about that sense of accountability and ownership. That's very important.
You got it. So that really summarizes this section that we wanted to talk about. I know that Ms. Cox wanted us to get into some investing stuff. In addition to maybe taking a look at this worksheet they all have for this week's homework. But we'll pause there and open it up for questions real quick before we pivot here and get into investments. I know some of y'all have some questions, so let's stop here and open it up.
I know Khalid is out there, and I believe, Khalil, you are investing now, aren't you, Mr. Lewis?
Yes, ma'am. I invested into Delta and I believe Exxon, and I just wanted to know what I taught myself that before I purchase, I look at the graph, but if it's like a steady flow, it can bring in money, but it's going to be at a slow pace where it'll take years for it to build up. Then you have some that's like up and then go down. Those could be your money makers, but at the same time, it's a win or lose situation because you never know.
Yeah, so what I would try to do, I would try to think about this is very good questions. This is the kind of question I get all the time. So figure out what is the goal of this pool of money that you're setting aside. Okay. Is it something that you want to allocate so that in 10 years you can buy a house with it? Is it something that you want to have set aside for retirement in 40 years? Is it something you're trying to make money off in the next year? You got to figure out what is the goal for this particular pool of capital. Okay. If it's just to make money, I mean, that's just going to be a very interesting situation. And so we go back to that risk situation, and we'll cover some of this here. Companies like ExxonMobil and Delta are what you would call a value stock, especially right now. And Delta's having a lot of tough times. Exxon's having tough times. No one's flying right now. The demand for oil internationally is very, very muted. It's recovering slightly, but those two companies are definitely positioned. They're thought leaders in their industries, and they're positioned to do well in the future. So those are the types of companies that over time you would expect to get dividends off of, and then to grow over a long time horizon. They're not the kind of stocks that you're going to pour into that are going to rise 5x over the course of a year, right? That's just not the type of business model they have. That's not how the analysts price out their stuff. So there's not going to be as much risk to them, although the last few months have been very volatile. Historically, those types of stocks aren't as risky. And so again, I tie this back into trying to figure out what is your goal for this pool of money. So like, just go ahead and answer that. What is your goal for this money you're setting aside?
My goal is to learn how to invest in stocks and keep buying stocks so it could grow and grow. I don't want to spend it. I just want to grow and grow and grow till I retire. And if I do have any kids, or I could just leave it in there for them.
No, I love that. That's awesome, man. That's fantastic. So, several things. I would say, I don't know what platform are you using for this? Like, where are you trading?
I use the Cash App app. I felt that was the easiest way for me to learn or see the stocks. But I heard, I forgot what app it was, but I just felt as if Cash App was like, I was able to understand it a lot better.
So the thing that I'll say is, if I were you, what I would try to start doing is continuing to contribute money to it and diversifying in the types of stocks that you're buying. So those two stocks that you mentioned are a small subset. One, there are only two companies, right? So you're susceptible to the risks of those two individual organizations. When Exxon has an oil spill, that affects that company's stock, whereas the entire energy sector is focused more on the price of oil and demand of oil, right? So what I would do is make sure you're on a platform that's not charging you transactions. They're not charging you a transaction fee when you trade these. I don't know if the Cash App does. I don't think it does.
No. When I looked, I didn't see any transaction fee at all. Yeah, but if I could go back and look and see if they charge me, and I would let you know.
Yeah, because there are platforms out there that don't charge a transaction cost. That is going to be important. You want to keep your fees and taxes as low as you possibly can, okay? Those are the only two things you can control in the investment business are fees and taxes. So if we're keeping those down, the next thing you want to do is if you keep contributing to this account in a systematic way, then you can buy other stocks and help to complement those stocks so that you have a diversified portfolio. An easy way to do that is to buy ETFs, which are funds. So there's an ETF, for example, it's IWF. It's a BlackRock fund that just buys all of the large cap growth stocks in the stock market, equally weighted based on market value. And so so if you buy one share of IWF, for example, for like $100, you have a small exposure to every company in that, which is Microsoft, Google, Apple, Amazon. You have a small portion of all these different stocks. So ETFs are really good ways to get broad-based exposure so that your returns aren't contingent on one company, how they performed individually.
It's on multiple.
Yeah, it's a whole swath of companies, and that way you're getting broad-based exposure to that type of market. The second thing I'll tell you is, and I don't know how much you're putting into these, but I would do this in a Roth IRA. So I don't know how you have it structured, but if you have it as an individual account, if you sell that, so like say you buy Exxon for $100 and now it's worth $200, and you want to sell that and rotate into another company, if it's in your individual name, you will have made $100 and you owe the government taxes on that earnings, okay? If you can put it into if you open up a Roth IRA account, you can contribute to that account $6,000 a year. So in that Roth IRA account, assuming you have earnings of $6,000 or more, if you put money into that and then buy Exxon, you'll never pay taxes on that for the rest of your life.
So James, can you talk about a Roth IRA? I'm hearing some terms, and what I want the students to understand is, even though they may not understand it now, they can understand it, because you didn't understand this stuff when you first started doing this. Well, you did, because you had a propensity for math in high school, but so do many of them. So talk to them about some of these acronyms you're using, right? So ETF, what is that? When you talk about a return, and what's a Roth IRA?
So an ETF is what it is. It's an exchange traded fund. So all it is a basket of individual stocks. So just a very simple example, there could be an ETF that it's just the largest 100 companies in the S&P 500. And so instead of going out to the market and buying a share of each of the companies each of the top 100 companies in the S&P 500, you can buy one share in an ETF, an exchange traded fund that will be that it is the sum of all those individual companies. So it's an easy way, a very low cost and tax efficient way to get broad-based stock ownership. That's the best way to do it from a cost perspective. So Roth IRA, there's different types of retirement accounts. So the government has created these vehicles to encourage people to save money. The government wants us all to save money and be self-sufficient in retirement so that they don't have to pay for us effectively and worry about it. So they've created vehicles that are advantageous from a tax perspective to encourage people to save money. And so there's something called a traditional IRA, where if you have income, you can put money into it before you pay taxes. So if you make $1,000 and you put money into a traditional IRA, you can go ahead and put $1,000 into this traditional IRA. You don't pay taxes on it until you take that money out when you're retired. Now, on the flip side of that, you can do what's called a Roth IRA, which is saying if you've already made the money, you've already paid taxes on it, you can put it into a Roth IRA, and then all the money you earn in there is tax-free, but you can't take it out until you retire. That's the caveat there, is you can't take it out until you're 59 years old. So again, if it's something that's long-term, and eventually what you want to do is you want to have several different vehicles built up. Like you want to have a 401k that's a Roth that's going to be tax deferred. You want to have your short-term savings that you have for maybe a house or for a car, something like that. You want to have an emergency savings account. You really want to have all these different vehicles built out over time. And this doesn't happen overnight. Like when you first start working, you really need to focus on making sure you have your debts paid, making sure you have emergency savings, making sure you have some of these things that give you the comfort and flexibility to go out there and do life. But eventually you want to have these things kind of set up and maybe automate the savings that's going to each of them, whether it's $50 a month to savings, $50 a month to a Roth IRA, $50 a month to my emergency fund. You want to automate this stuff that's going on every 2 weeks, and then you can live off the rest of your income, and all this stuff is just passively increasing for the rest of your life. That's the type of setup that I would encourage. And for your specific example, when you look at which stocks to buy, you know, what's more important than these specific stocks right now, the more important thing is how much you're contributing on a regular basis. That's going to drive the future value more so than the individual positions you're putting in at this point in time. When you're further down the road and say you've been contributing to this for 10 years and now you got tens of thousands of dollars in here, now it becomes a little more important on which stocks you're buying. But for the intermediate time, the most important thing is that you are contributing to this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Hey, James, can you talk a little bit about, thank you for that. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between stockpile? I see a couple of folks, Uncle Travis said that there's an app out there called Coinbase, and then Aaliyah Allen said she's used Stockpile previously. Can you share with attendees today, what are the 3 low fee avenues that they can take to purchase stocks right now at their age?
Okay, so Stockpile is fine, but it's not one of the best. So Stockpile is effectively a platform where you can buy fractional shares. And what I mean by that is if Apple is $350 a share, you can just buy $20 worth instead of having to buy 1 full share. The challenge is they still charge $1 for all their trades. And so if you're buying $20 worth of stock and you're paying $1 to do that, I mean, that's 5% of your value is wiped out immediately. Okay, so that's what I'm going back to these transaction costs. So Stockpile is a fine one, but it's not the best. There are apps, or there are companies out there. Robinhood is one. Robinhood has free trading. That is probably a good place to go. And the way they make money is they take your balances and they lend it out, and then they sell your transactions. They front run your transactions to high frequency traders. We don't need to get into the details there, but for your situations now, I would say Robinhood would be a good place to start. Coinbase is more focused on Bitcoin and things like that, which are more speculative vehicles. I don't even know if I would consider them investments. But some people have done incredibly well with Bitcoin for sure, but it's very, very risky. Those platforms have some like anonymity to them, which again is in my mind, it's a little more, you want to be a little more conservative when you're investing your money. Because it could be your everything, and you want to do it with something that's going to be a little more secure. So I would say Robinhood is a good place to start for a lot of you young folks.
Good deal. What other questions do we have for Mr. James? You know, something that I heard Ira talk about previously is that, so I've always said this to you guys, your network. So Mr. James Yost, Mr. Ira, all of your coaches, your youth tree team leaders, we are your network. Your network will determine your net worth, because while you're developing the education, while you're developing the discipline, right? While you're developing a plan and a vision, you've got to have people in your circle and sphere of influence who know more than you do. And we brought James here today, and Mr. Ira has been with us for the whole summer, but you've got experts here. So who has questions for these experts? Because now's the time for you guys to start leveling up. So who has questions?
Okay. So
go there, yeah. Go there.
I love it.
All right. So with the IRA, right? I was told that we can't start one until like the age of 18, and it'd take you you wouldn't be able to access it until 5 years.
So I don't know how old you can be before you can start one. But you really can't take it out until you're 59 without penalty. So, you know, you really need to think about, like I said, like, what was my man's name? Where's he? We were talking a minute ago. Might have lost him. I can't see him anymore. Oh yeah, is it Khalid?
Yes, sir.
So he and I were talking, you really want to have these different buckets of money, and you want to kind of prioritize. Like when you're first starting out, You want to make sure you have savings, an emergency savings account. That's priority number one. Then you want to start thinking like, what are the benefits I want to have in the next 5 to 10 years? So that type of investment will warrant a different risk exposure. It'll be in a different structure. And then you want to focus on, all right, I need to set myself up for retirement in the future. How do I take advantage of these? So you really need to, and that's beyond the scope of the conversation today, unfortunately. But that's the kind of thing that you need to try to figure out is where do I prioritize and how do I start here? Because if you're trying to access something within the next 5 years, the IRA is not the right vehicle to do that. Aaliyah Allen asked about currency trading. So I see this kind of stuff all the time on like Instagram, and like anything that sounds too good to be true is probably too good to be true. So if someone is telling you that they have an idea that is guaranteed to do X, Y, and Z, I would probably turn around and walk the opposite direction because they probably don't know what they're talking about. Just being perfectly honest, for what I've seen. You can make money in the currency markets for sure, but there is no guaranteed risk-free way at all to do that. It just does not exist. If it did, it wouldn't be somebody with a computer and just hanging out doing it. It is someone. The amount of technology that some of these hedge funds have with multi-billion-dollar funds cannot consistently produce the exact same results that people on Instagram claim that they can. Just think about that. If a hedge fund with hundreds of people and multiple PhDs on staff and billions of dollars cannot do this, then I don't know why someone on Instagram thinks that they can. Like, that's just the honest truth. So if you're talking about currency trading, forex trading, all that stuff is pure speculation. And I would just be very wary before you. I know a lot of people out there advertise classes where they'll teach this for $5,000 or whatever. I would be very hesitant to invest anything in any of these platforms, as these are they're making more money on the fees that they're getting from you than they are from the actual investing that they're doing themselves. Otherwise, if you had a secret that worked every time, and why would you share that with other people instead of using that for yourself to make money, right? So you got to figure out where the conflicts of interest there lie. All right, virtual currency like Bitcoin, that is like a lot of people ask about Bitcoin. Obviously, it's been like 3 years ago, it went from like $2,000 a coin to like 15,000 or 19,000, then dropped it pretty slow overnight to 3,000. Bitcoin is a purely speculative investment. I don't even call it an investment. It is a purely speculative gamble. There is no risk premia associated with Bitcoin whatsoever. Like when you own a house and you're renting that house out to somebody else, that they do not want to have the risk of owning that house. That's why they pay you a premium in terms of rent. There's a value there. Bitcoin has absolutely no value whatsoever. Nobody transacts in it. It is very slow, it is unreliable, and there are multiple coins that are coming out more recently that have more value, that are better to transact with, they're more secure, they have a better blockchain protocol. So I would be very, very hesitant. All the last three things, the currency trading, Forex, and Bitcoin, these are the types of things you want to, there should be red flags immediately. If someone comes to you with an idea, Aaliyah wants me to talk about that. What specifically do you want me to talk about?
You said that there were more, I guess you just said Bitcoin, there's like other coins that have more value. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so the thing about Bitcoin is it's extremely complicated. It is very energy intensive, meaning to mine the coins, it takes a lot of computing power, which is not only bad for the environment, but it's extremely costly. So there are other coins that have been created that are on what's called a proof of value or proof of ownership concept, or sorry, proof of stake concept, rather than proof of, I don't even remember what it was for Bitcoin, but basically it's a different way to mine the coins. And then also Bitcoin takes several minutes to settle a transaction. Whereas like if you go to Starbucks, you would never and you can go and pay with cash, which is instant, or a credit card, which takes a fraction of a second. Why would you ever go and buy it with Bitcoin, which takes 5 minutes to process the transaction? So why would Starbucks ever even consider implementing something like Bitcoin? They never will, they never would, and it's never gonna happen. There are other things out there that is more instantaneous that could be used in the future. But again, those three things, if you hear of any get rich quick scheme, there's no secrets to what I'm trying to explain to you guys. It's the discipline, it's doing this over time. That is the key. Anything that's these get rich quick schemes, which a lot of people have with the currency trading, with Forex, with Bitcoin, with all these cryptocurrencies, those are, I'm not going to say they're always a scam, but I would definitely say that the vast majority of people that have actually created wealth in this country and have actually done it has not been from any of these little things here. And so I would just be very wary when people come to you with these ideas, because they might sound smart and they might be good salesmen, but chances are they really don't know what they're doing, and they probably haven't made a lot of money doing it themselves.
Hey, James, can I add something real quick?
Yes, sir.
I think a large, a really important component that I think we really need to discuss is education, right? If you listen to James, he's able to rattle off all of these different vehicles. He's able to rattle off how things have helped people because of historical data, historical information that he has. He's able to talk about different industries. He's able to talk about the Forex, Bidex, because he's invested the time in getting this knowledge, right? And I think that's huge. If you're interested in investing, buying stocks, mutual funds, putting your money in places that could potentially earn you some type of ROI, that's return on investment, please educate yourself, not only on the process of doing it, but on the industry that you're trying to that you're trying to invest in. One of the things that really changed the way I approached investing was picking companies that I was interested in, whether I like the brand, whether I like what they were doing in the community, and then reading their perspectives, reading their earnings reports, going on seeing what they're trying to do in the future. Yeah, right now it should be mostly about creating a behavior of contribution, but I want you also to get in the habit of researching, doing your due diligence on these companies to see where they're headed, to see what their long-term goals are. I think that's an important part of investing. And once you start doing that, to me, it transforms into more of a, I don't want to say it's a game, but it's super interesting to look at companies and say, okay, they're talking about investing in 5G, or they're talking about investing in solar or something that's can potentially can help us down the road. If you look at like Starbucks, Shaq said one of the biggest mistakes he made was not investing a ton of money in Starbucks. They wanted him, I think, to be a spokesperson or invest at a startup with them. Think of Uber, think of Facebook. People were knowledgeable about what the industry was doing, the shifts that were happening. So they were quick to get in the game and invest their money because they did the research. And I don't want us to lose that. Make sure you're doing the research and the self-education in the field that you want to invest in, or just overall. Read the Wall Street Journal. I mean, that's an amazing source of information of what industries are doing and changes that are happening. That's all I want to say, James.
James, can I throw this in there, James and Ira? The education piece is critical. That's the whole reason that CSE is here. You know, my father, I grew up in New York, and my father used to make me read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times every day, and I had to write a paper and report out on what I read at the dinner table. And I hated it then, but I realize now that he was teaching me to invest in myself. Education, nobody can take that away from you guys. Education's critical. And James, I want to challenge you and Ira. I've posed to the students here that we're not just here for them for the summer, because I believe mentorship is long-term. So again, those of you who desire to tap into us and the resources and the knowledge that we have, we encourage you to stay connected, because I'm going to challenge Mr. James and Mr. Ira to come back in the Zoom room, the CSE Zoom room with us at some point in the future, so you can walk us through the Wall Street Journal. Because every one of you on this call, every one of you has the ability to understand, comprehend, and execute whatever you learn from a financial perspective. So Ira and James, can I count on y'all to come back into the Zoom room at another time for this?
Absolutely. Come down.
Good deal. Okay, so keep. Okay, are there any more questions? Because these are awesome questions you guys have. No more? Did we exhaust you guys? So here's what I'd love to do, since I don't see anybody coming up yet. So Ira and James, I sent the homework. So pages 62 through 66. So this is kind of like when you're in class, right? And we actually have a guest speaker, and the guest speaker is going to help us walk through the homework assignment. So YTT, a part of your homework for next week is what I'm about to ask Mr. Ira and Mr. James to go through very quickly with us. This talks about bucket lists. There's a couple of examples here that talk about investment products. It's really important that you all understand what investment products are and what type of investor are you. So what is your tolerance for risk? That's another reason that you've got to study, right? So, I think if I can just challenge, not challenge, but if I can ask James and Ira to talk a little bit about bucket lists. When did you create a bucket list? How old were you? And what did that mean to you? And why did you create it?
For me, when you say bucket list, we're talking about strictly financial?
No, anything. So this bucket list says what are experiences, adventures, and accomplishments that you want to achieve in your life? Because most of these experiences and accomplishments are going to require some monetary contribution, right?
Right. So
Right.
I was fairly young when I created my bucket list, and it was solely off of me being influenced by what I saw growing up. So I created bucket lists in my mind that I wanted to own my own business. I wanted to basically live. I wanted to live in a situation where it wasn't necessarily in the rat race. I saw a lot growing up, right? Based on my experiences at home, and I knew I did not want to emulate that or have those experiences as I got older. So for me, my bucket list was, to be completely frank, is to not live as an adult the way I lived as a child. And so I started putting together a plan on what I thought would help me get there, i.e. going to school, getting a college degree, making sure that I invested in myself and my time in things that would, help grow me from a knowledge perspective, so I can make better decisions. And again, this is nothing against my parents or anything like that, because they did the best that they could with the information that they had. But I knew I wanted more. So my bucket list pertains to me having insight and doing things as an adult and moving towards as an adult that I did not get to see, or things that I saw as a child that I didn't want to happen as an adult. I guess I should say it that way, if that answers your question.
It did, because what I heard you say on your bucket list was education, and you wanted to strive to live a better life and to have a better life than that life that you had growing up. So bucket list. So that was income earning, that was, getting your college degree and then getting into a job that actually was going to help you earn a livable wage beyond. So you obviously had an income goal there too, didn't you, Ira?
Oh, definitely. You couldn't tell me I wasn't going to graduate school making six figures. I don't know why I thought that. It's just in my mind. Like, I went to school for finance, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to graduate making six figures. My first job, it was $32,000, and great, more money than I had ever made before. But in my mind, I don't know why I thought I was going to make six figures. I played myself really good.
So James, talk to us about your bucket list, brother. So when did you create one, and why did you create it, and what were like the top 3 things on your bucket list?
Yeah, so I started doing that kind of exercise when I actually started working. And so what I would kind of do is try to establish like a 5-year goal and a 10-year goal. Luckily, when I was in college, I was able to buy a car, which was great, just a cheap, 25-year-old car. So that was already kind of knocked off. But for me, the next few things were really, there were things in my personal life I wanted to do, such as reading a certain number of books and getting certain professional designations, and then doing certain things with physical stuff, like running a certain amount of 5Ks or 10Ks or weighing a certain amount, like exercises. It's kind of a comprehensive list, but also it included long-term home ownership, certain milestones I wanted to hit financially over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And then that really has turned into an annual list that I do every year. So at the beginning of every year, I'll check and see how I did on all my annual goals for the past year, and then track those, and then create what the goals are I want to have for the next year. And so if one year I want to read 12 books and save a certain amount of money, at the end of the year, I'll check to see how I did with that. Did I hit my retirement savings goal? Did I hit my medium-term savings goal for a house? And how have I executed on those? And then I'll refine that and then change it, tweak it for the next year. And so for me, that's how I do it, and I like it. It's worked well. And you don't hit them all every year, and that's okay. But just having those goals, I think, pushes you forward in a way that not having them, you just won't be able to do the same amount with. So that's how I do it.
So what I heard you say, James, was you actually started creating a bucket list when you started working. So what can you say to our young people here? Because they're working. I mean, this is not their ultimate end all be all job, but many of them are going to go into this industry. So what's the advantage of actually starting that process now versus when you become an adult and you're working as an adult?
So the difference is, like a lot of these techniques that we've talked about, the individual act of each of these techniques is not something that's very substantial. But if you start early and track it, then over time, like if you go ahead and start contributing $50 a month or a paycheck into a savings account and invest that money into the market, 2 weeks or a month from now, it's not going to seem like a lot. But if you look at it 3 years from now, and it'll blow your mind with what you've been able to accomplish. And so starting early and getting the discipline early will make all the difference down the road. I have so many friends who are in their 30s who just started investing and started because they've spent everything that they've made. And so now they're in their 30s and they're trying to start a family and they don't have a house and they don't have the financial security and they don't have anything saved for retirement, but they've been making good money the whole time. They've just been spending all their money. That's why I tied back to that first point is by far the most important thing one of the most important things that I talked about, which is taking a look at your personal situation and figuring out what sacrifices can you make to where you can start contributing to your financial future and your peace of mind that comes with having a sound financial future. And so that's what I would say. That's how I would leave it.
Man, that's absolutely dope. And it's 9:29. I've got one last question. So guys, we're not going to be able to get through all your homework because this was going to be the cheat way of doing it because we were going to do it with our subject matter experts. You all are responsible for this. So pages 62 through 66, and we will talk about this in the coaching session. James, I heard you talk earlier about your car. We have several students, and students, this should resonate with you because we've been talking about setting goals. So James, a part of what we're doing with our students here at YTT is the income they're earning. We're encouraging them to establish a minimum of 3 financial goals. And I heard you say that your goals and your bucket list had everything to do with the totality of who you are. So your total being, it was physical health, right? It was some things that you wanted to encourage yourself to get from an educational standpoint. Yep. So our students have been tasked to do the same thing. Many of them want to buy cars. Can you talk to us about the best way? Where do they go? Because nobody on this call, maybe some of them, will be able to go to their parents and say, Mom, Dad, I'd like to buy a car. Can we go get a loan? I don't encourage that because it's their first vehicle. Where are 3 places you would encourage our students to go look for a car?
So, this is a tough one. And it really depends on your relationships. So like if you have someone, the best possible scenario is if you have someone in your life who knows about cars, who's a mechanic, and that you can have them take a look at a used car before you buy it. So if you have that scenario, if you're fortunate enough to where someone in your family or one of your close family friends is a mechanic and knows about cars, then you can go on Craigslist or wherever the case may be, somewhere that there's going to be a secondary market where someone's trying to sell you a car in a private transaction. And that's how you're going to be able to, you can say, hey, look, I'd love to buy this car. I can pay you cash, but I'd like to have my mechanic take a look at it. Everyone's okay with that. That's very standard practice. Your mechanic friend can take a look at it and let you know, okay, wow, this thing's a lemon, it's going to be dead in a year, or this is a very good deal, you need to buy this car. So that's priority. If you have that, and you're fortunate enough to have a relationship like that, that's priority number 1. If you don't, then I would stick to something like Carfax, for example. They sell cars that are previously owned that have been vetted, and you have their experts take a look at it. Unfortunately, you're going to pay a premium for that, right? Because you're having someone else do the research and the work on it. But that would be a good place to start. I would say getting a used vehicle, probably in the 10-year range, probably something like a Honda, something that's reliable, a Honda, a Toyota. I'll ask this. Who knows what's the number 1 car that's driven by millionaires?
Great question. Write it in the chat box, you guys. What's the number 1 car that's owned by millionaires with an M? Anybody know? Somebody said Tesla. Hello? What? A Nissan. Lambo, okay. Honda Civic, Evan, okay. Kia, used Ford Escape, because you got to think about that maintenance, y'all, and that insurance.
So there's two schools of thoughts. There's trucks and then there's cars. Tesla, Mercedes, Lambo, Bentley, those are all incorrect. So the most owned car is a Toyota Camry. And that is because millionaires know that if you buy a Toyota Camry that's 5 to 10 years used, and it is very inexpensive to maintain, and it's very reliable, and it's a very fine car. People that buy, a lot of people own expensive cars that they probably can't really afford to own. And that goes hand in hand with all the things we've talked about. So that's just a little tidbit that I thought I would throw out there for y'all.
James, you and Ira have been the bomb.com. I got one other thing for you guys, because I want you guys to get in on my adult population, because what you taught today was amazing. This will be posted out there on social media because we recorded today. This was a wealth of great information. Guys, give Mr. James Yost and Ira, Royal Coach Ira, give them a round of applause. Hand claps, please, because they dropped the mic, the virtual mic today. James, thank you. YTT, we are going to bid you adieu for the moment, and we will be back in the Coach's Corner at 11:15. So make sure you got your link, come in, be ready to work, so we can nail this, so we can set you up for financial freedom. James, I love you, man. Ira, you know you're my dude. Thank you so much. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a good day.
You too.
All right, YTT. Let's take a 10-minute break, a little screen break. It's 9:34 right now, so come back at 9:44, and we are going to talk about our video presentations for graduation. Everybody got that? Thumbs up if you got it.
Are we
Yes,
going
ma'am.
to be able to go into
Yes,
our
ma'am.
own separate groups to work on them individually, like breakout rooms?
Yeah. Good question. We're going to talk about it as a big group first, and then around 10 o'clock, we'll break out into our smaller groups to work on them individually. All right, I'll see you guys in 10 minutes.